At this point, it has become an annual tradition for me to make a video listing my bold takes before the season starts, and for the 2025-2026 season, I'm hoping to land on a higher percentage of them. Last year, I ended up hitting on really just one of my 5 predictions. Let's see if we can do better this time. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. Also, as you may or may not have noticed, we do hot takes around here where I react to yours. I brought them back after a playoff hiatus. The last episode flopped super hard, so if you want to go check that out, I would really appreciate it. But before I get into my boldest takes for the upcoming season, I think it'd be fun to also make it part of the tradition in the future to reflect on last year's video and the bold takes that mostly did not land. Before I get into today's video, I want to talk about our sponsor, Factor. If you're like me, a person who's busy caring about stuff other than yourself, then you probably don't have an ideal diet. Generally speaking, for me, eating consistently and eating well has been extremely difficult in the past. Luckily, today's sponsor, Factor, makes both so much easier. Factor is more affordable than takeout and even more convenient with fresh, never frozen meals delivered right to your door. Then it's only 2 minutes in the microwave and your meal is ready. If you have a chaotic schedule like me, being able to prepare something quickly like you can with Factor really helps. Factor is also very customizable with over 35 meals to choose per week, and you can specify options to your dietary restrictions. There are calorie smart options if you're trying to lose weight, keto options if you're dodging carbs, and protein plus if you're getting back in the gym. I even got these juices, which are nothing short of satisfying. Factor eliminates the hassle of prepping, cooking, and cleaning up. Simply heat and savor the good stuff. Head to factor75.com or use the link in the description and use code 50ALSO-RUSTY to get 50% off of your first Factor box. Again, that is code 50ALSO-RUSTY to get 50% off of your first box, and a huge shout out to Factor for sponsoring this video. I'm hoping that it's recognized that these takes were indeed bold, so hitting on them all was never really going to happen. But with that said, my first take was that the Hornets will make the playoffs. That did not happen. My reasoning was that LaMelo has historically had a good record whenever he does play for the Charlotte Hornets, so he just needed to get healthy. I also liked their rookie, who's now going to be a sophomore going into this next year. I thought that there was enough there, but not really. LaMelo Ball is actually healthy this time around, so it wasn't even like there was that excuse this time. Just it didn't happen. He played worse. I think he had a worse year than he ever had before, really, relative to what he's capable of. His efficiency was bad. There's also plenty of other things beyond LaMelo's fault, but I was banking on LaMelo being healthy as the reason that this would happen, and he was healthy and it still didn't happen, so says a lot. Next one was that the Steph trade market would heat up around the deadline unless they ended up making a big trade. My reasoning being that the roster was bleak as fuck and that Steph had made it clear that he isn't necessarily determined to retire a Warrior. He had a lot of quotes that offseason that were like, yeah, we're going to keep doing this thing, but at a certain point, he didn't say it like that, but you know what I mean. There were hints that he could potentially look into something like that if what had happened last year continued throughout this one, but they did end up making that big trade for Jimmy Butler, so I guess I was kind of half right, but I also didn't really believe that they were going to make such a deal. The other one was that the Mavericks will have the greatest offense of all time. They had a great offense last year during the regular season, and an especially great one during the playoffs, and I felt like Klay's addition as a sharpshooter would go a long way. This did not pan out, primarily because they traded Luka Doncic, but it didn't look like they were really on pace to be an all-time offense, even if they did not do that. So still not really the greatest take. The Memphis Grizzlies will be a top 2 seed in the West. My reasoning was that they have one of the best starting lineups in the NBA when healthy, and I believed that Zach Edey would be very good as a starting center for them, and I was actually right about this up until the very end of the season. That the Grizzlies were a top 2 seed or a top 3 seed for almost all of the year, and then just a huge fall off a cliff the last month or two of the season. Also, Zach Edey was not a big part of why they were good early, because the previous head coach didn't really care for Zach Edey, didn't play him all that much. But yeah, I feel like I get half a point for this one because they were a top 2 seed for quite a while, and there were not a lot of people expecting that. But my final take, the one that actually was good, was that the Thunder will be the title favorites by the time the playoffs start. The favorites going into that season were still the Boston Celtics, but the Thunder were right behind them, and my reasoning for this was they had an amazing offseason. Their young guys will develop and get better, and there also just haven't been any repeat champions since 2018, and lo and behold, the Thunder were indeed the favorite going into the 2025 playoffs. So I feel good about being fully right about that one, and right for like most of the season before the Grizzlies decided to fold at the very end, but I'm trying to shoot a higher percentage this time, so let's see how it goes. Take number 1, my first bold take for the 2025-2026 season, is that the Detroit Pistons will become contenders. My reasoning for this is they went toe-to-toe with the Knicks, went 6 games, very easily could have gone 7, and if a few other things flipped around, they very easily could have won that series. This is a Knicks team that would go on to beat the defending champion Boston Celtics, and don't give me the Tatum injury excuse. They were about to take a 3-1 lead before Tatum even got hurt. After that, they managed to push Indiana to 6 games, the team that did indeed make the finals. So just by proxy of that, the Pistons were probably closer to contending in the East than we already thought they were, but I also think they should be a good bit better next season, as the East is also weak as fuck to make all of that easier. I originally detested the Caris LeVert edition because I thought he was a Malik Beasley replacement, but then they ended up signing Duncan Robinson, so he was actually a Dennis Schroeder replacement, and I think Caris LeVert is an upgrade from Dennis Schroeder. I think Duncan Robinson is a better all-around player than Malik Beasley, though he's not going to have as great of a shooting season as Beasley did, having the second most made threes in the league. But there's going to be some internal improvement. Jaden Ivey is going to be available, and he was looking pretty good before he got hurt. Not an all-star, but still a very good player and quite young, so he could come back even better than that. I just believe that this team is pretty good, and that their core, the role players that they signed in free agency, got the team that little bit better. The internal improvement should get them that little bit better. And again, the East, pretty wide open. In fact, 4 out of the 5 takes in this video are about the Eastern Conference teams. Last one, I don't know if you noticed, it was 4 out of 5 that were the West. The East is just more open to takes this year because it is open in general. Speaking of, my next take is that Giannis will win the MVP award for 2026. My reasoning is that his numbers have always been nuts. He will absolutely put up an MVP stat line. There is no worry there. But he will be more obviously carrying the Bucks than he was before, which works to his favor narratively. Beforehand, while he was still kind of carrying the Bucks, he had Damian Lillard there, so there was still some like plausible deniability, like you still have an all-star caliber teammate, so can't really act like you're carrying. But I think if he can get the Bucks to a top 3 seed with Miles Turner and Kyle Kuzma as his best teammates, that is a very, very compelling case for MVP. On top of that, I don't really feel like Shea is going to repeat. I also think there is a lot of tiredness with Nikola Jokic, voter fatigue and all of that, and it's kind of been those 3 who have been the main MVP candidates the past couple of years. Luka Doncic mixed in there as well. Luka could possibly make a case. All of these guys could still make a case, but I think Giannis is in a position where his roster is so poor that he will have the argument that he is doing the most with the least. And the East is so open that even though he is doing the most with the least, the most can still be a top-ish seed in the Eastern Conference, which would be enough, I think, to get him his 3rd MVP award. It also helps that it's been quite a while since he won his last MVP award. I think his last one was 2020 or 2021. Speaking of the MVP award, the next take is that Trae Young is going to finish top 3 in MVP voting. The reasoning for this being that the Hawks got a lot better this offseason, but the ball will still be in his hands constantly. Like when they did the DeJounte Murray trade a few seasons ago, I felt decent about that they could make that work, but it both didn't make them better, really, and took the ball out of Trae Young's hands, which made his numbers worse. This previous year, his numbers were great because the ball was back in his hands, but the Hawks were not very good. Their record was not great. Did they even make, did they make the play-in? I can't even I don't think so. Maybe they made the play-in, but I'm pretty sure they didn't make the playoffs. Yeah. They haven't been in the playoffs the last 2 years. So the numbers are there, the talent is there, and that's great. And then you have a much improved roster because of the addition of Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Kennard, a healthy Jalen Johnson, hopefully, no more Clint Capella taking minutes away from Onyeka Okongwu, and as Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which is another good addition. So they got a good team. Again, the East is pretty wide open, so I think the Hawks could capture a top 3 seed, and if Trae does that, while he is putting up 25 points per game, 11 assists per game, I think that would be enough to propel him into MVP discussions. However, I don't think he'd win it. I don't think he would get the Hawks a clear enough cut lead in the standings. I don't think his numbers would be overwhelmingly better than that of Giannis and other MVP candidates. But for the most part, the top 3 MVP candidates have been locked in for almost all just being the same guys the past couple of years. I also should throw Joel Embiid in that. He's been in that pool as well. I think he has a very good chance of getting a high place, of having actual MVP talks surrounding him. Here we have a Western Conference take finally, and that is that the New Orleans Pelicans will be making the playoffs and Zion Williamson will be an all-star player again, possibly all-NBA. My reasoning for this is that he has a solid supporting cast and looked better physically than at any other point in his NBA career last season. He looked like Duke Zion for a decent stretch there, and that is huge. And if that momentum can carry over into this season, that is awesome. I also noticed that there is this pattern with his injury history. Whenever he plays 20 to 30 games, he plays 60 to 70 the season after it. So he played 30 games this previous year. Stands to reason he'll play 60 to 70. That could just be dumb superstition, but the pattern does exist. I also think he got in such good shape that I'm more inclined to believe in his relative health. And I also just like this Pelicans roster a decent bit. A little wary of the point guard position because you have DeJounte Murray as well as their lottery pick fighting for that spot. Neither of them do I think are the best at setting up Zion, which I think would help a lot to bolster his numbers. But Zion also had his best numbers relative to minutes last year. So I think he can put up very, very good stats, get the Pelicans to an 8th seed. Maybe they're in just that play-in territory most of the year. Maybe they jump up even higher than that. And if he manages to do that while putting up crazy numbers, all NBA is in the cards. I think that's reasonable. He needs to be healthy long enough, and then the Pelicans also need to be winning enough to make that happen. But they secured Herb Jones. Trey Murphy is someone who I'm a really big fan of. He did a lot of development offensively last year with more opportunity. So yeah, I feel good about them. My final take, and yet another Eastern Conference take: the Orlando Magic will make it to the NBA Finals. My reasoning here is, once more, the East is just very weak, and Paulo and Franz both had career years, and they are only going to get better. They have also not actually played together all that much throughout this tenure, and I would love to see what those guys with a good supporting cast around them can do, and I personally am very high on it. 2 6'10" forwards who are extremely versatile on both ends of the floor. Both are good playmakers, both are decent shot creators, both are great slashers, both are very switchable on defense, can defend multiple positions. So I think those two as a duo is really strong, and I like the Desmond Bane addition a lot. If you did not manage to see my reaction to that deal, because I did not put it out at the time, I have talked about it since, I think this is a deal that actually puts them in a similar roster construction space as the Boston Celtics in 2024, where Bane is essentially your Derek White White, your third option guy who dribbles the ball a lot, is probably your overall best three-point shooter and also gets down on defense. Bane, I think, will do a little bit more scoring than Derek White, but that plug and play there does make sense. And then Jalen Suggs, I think, is going to have a career year. I would compare him to Drew Holiday in that situation. Just this dog on defense who is a good passer, who hits his corner threes, fills the lanes well, all of that stuff. I think that Suggs will have a great year. I think that Bane will have a great year. And if Paolo and Franz can be healthy and play together for decent stretches throughout the year, they can develop that continuity to make them a more impressive, a more dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. I think this Desmond Bane trade has gone under the radar quite a bit, and I think it's probably the most significant trade that has been made in the Eastern Conference. And I don't think there's a deal more important to the landscape of the league in the East than that Desmond Bane trade, and I personally just believe that that big three, maybe big four if Suggs is really like that, will be a lot. I still have concerns about their depth. I specifically have concerns about their center position because they just have a whole bunch of guys who are like C-plus solutions. Goga Badatse, Wendell Carter, Jonathan Isaac is actually really good at center, but he does not get to play much because of his long injury history. So I think they could use a little bit more depth, but the thing is, they have the assets to add other significant pieces. They traded a lot of their draft capital, but they still have more that they can trade. They also have a good bit of young players that they can possibly trade. They did not move on from Anthony Black in that deal as an example. So yeah, I think the Magic have a very real shot of being the best team in the Eastern Conference. I also feel like when I look around the rest of the East, like the Boston, or not the Boston Celtics, they're out for this year. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I think the size that they have on the wings will really interfere with how Cleveland's defense works, given how small they are in terms of their perimeter defense. So I like the Magic a lot. I believe in the Magic a lot. That said, my actual belief is that there's a handful of teams that could come out of the Eastern Conference. You could tell me it's the Bucks. You could tell me it's the Pistons. You could tell me it's the Hawks. You could tell me it's the Cavs. You could tell me it's the Magic. You could tell me it's the Knicks. Hell, you could maybe even tell me it's the Sixers if they manage to get a string of injury luck for the first time in God knows how long, if ever. But the Magic, I'm putting my flag in the ground, putting the stake in, whatever the fuck that expression is. I think the Magic are going to be legit. So that is my top 5 bold takes going into the season. I will real quick run you through those one more time. The first take is the Detroit Pistons are going to become contenders because they went toe-to-toe with the Knicks last year, who ended up going all the way to the conference finals and going toe-to-toe with the Pacers. I think Giannis will win MVP because he has the he's carrying his team argument in the bag while also facing a conference that is bad enough to allow him to win it, or to get a top seed rather. Trae Young will finish top 3 in MVP voting. Hawks got better. His numbers will be great, and there will be more winning. East, easier, same thing. The New Orleans Pelicans will make the playoffs, and Zion Williamson will be an all-star and all-NBA player again. He has a solid supporting cast, looked better physically, and I just think if he can be healthy, real opportunity there. And then lastly, the Magic are going to make the finals. Paolo and Franz as a duo, Suggs and Bane as complementary guys next to them. I just think that's really good. So yeah, those are my 5 bold takes going into the 2025-2026 season. Let me know what your biggest and boldest take is in the comments below. But again, if you want me to react to your hot takes, it is available in the hot take series on this channel. And there is also Discord hot takes over on my Little Rusty Buckets channel if you would like to check out. If you would like to guarantee, more or less, that I react to your take, you can join the Patreon, join the Discord, and get your Discord hot take reacted to. But that's enough of being a shill. That is the end of this video. Thank you so much to Nick for editing it, and goodbye.